919. You're listening to 919.
They say nothing ever lasts. But what about the Fast and Furious franchise? Or showing Anaconda 2 for Friday Action Night? Or how Brooke is still forgiving Ridge Forrester like 50 seasons in? And then there's Burger King's Whopper Meal deal, which is still going strong. So get your hands on 2 flame-grilled Whoppers topped with the freshest ingredients, plus 2 portions of crispy golden fries and 2 bottomless drinks for only 130 Rand. Only at Burger King, where good things do last.
919 has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, programming that is not harmful to children and that does not amount to hate speech, or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. If you think we're not living up to that code, you can inform the BCCSA. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa to PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024, or email the BCCSA at napsa.co.za. For more information, visit the bccsa.co.za. We all love a good story. Stories of love and life. Stories that entertain and inspire. And the best stories are the ones that happen to be true. Every Friday night, Jack Devnerine is live in conversation with an iconic South African personality who shares the true stories that shape their remarkable lives. Join us for reality radio as real as it gets. From 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Friday night, only on 919.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. You're listening to 919. My name is Jack Devnerine and this is Reality Radio. It's as real as it gets on a Friday night when we have a guest live in studio to talk about the incredible stories that shaped their remarkable lives. Tonight, what a pleasure to have in studio my good friend. He is South African weightlifting champion. He is one of the strongest athletes on the African continent and prospect for the IWF Weightlifting World Championships, Will Swart.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, it's good to be here.
What a pleasure, man. It's been a long time since we had an athlete, certainly an athlete with somebody of your credentials and qualifications and background. So it's so good to have you here talking about your life, your career, the journey, and how you found yourself in weightlifting. This is the interesting thing for me, because how do people normally experience the sport of weightlifting? Typically through watching TV, right?
Yeah, TV, and I mean in South Africa, pretty much only the Olympics.
Yeah.
Olympics or Commonwealth Games. For me personally, that's the only time I'd ever seen it. It's always been something that resonated with me, but something that I really didn't know much about until I got into it.
So people often mistake Olympic lifting from other kinds of strength sports. What are the typical mistakes people make?
There's a few.
That's a fact.
The big one that is sort of the automatic is you say, I do weightlifting, and people think you're a bodybuilder.
Yes. Yes. So, but if people look at you now, they do think that you are a bodybuilder, right?
I mean, you can see why they have that connection. But bodybuilding is standing on a stage and showing off your physique.
Right. Being judged for the aesthetic nature of your physique and
exactly.
how developed you are, muscular, vascular, symmetrical.
So that's bodybuilding. Weightlifting or strength sports, the two main ones are powerlifting, as you well know, and weightlifting. So they're both a similar premise, which is who can lift the most weight.
Right.
And then the difference between the two is powerlifting is the squat, the bench, the deadlift, more of a pure strength sport. And weightlifting is, again, who can lift the most between a snatch and a clean and jerk.
Yeah.
You have 3 attempts at the snatch, 3 attempts at the clean and jerk. Your best weight in each is what gets added together in your total. And that's weightlifting ultimately.
And of course, the big thing is that you're on a platform with the bar that weighs a certain amount, each plate weighs a certain amount, the collars weigh a certain amount, and you got your 3 refs around you as well.
Yeah, so you got everyone watching. And it's sort of, you got to put if you say I'm going to go for 100 kilograms, and that's what's loaded on that bar on those weights, and everyone watching is you need to, within the rules of the game, which can be very strict sometimes, is take that weight from the floor to above your head in one fluid motion for snatch, and clean and jerk in 2 motions.
You see, this is exactly where it's separate from powerlifting, because in powerlifting, the weight never has to go overhead. So it's a whole different way of thinking about the lift. You've got to use your levers in a different way. You've got to apply force to achieve momentum, and with the right timing to be able to get it above your head.
Yeah. So it's a lot of elements that go into it.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to be strong enough. You also need to be flexible enough. You also need to be technically sound enough, brave enough even to lift a really heavy weight up and shoot your body underneath and trust that you're going to catch it above your head and not get absolutely crushed. So there's a lot of elements that go into it. I think something that I always explain it to my friends as, imagine a golf shot.
Yeah.
You know, you're hitting a drive. Yes, one part of it is swinging the club as fast as you can to hit the ball as far as you can. But at the same time, you got to hit it perfectly in the right spot, and your body's got to go through the right motion to hit it in that spot to get a really good shot. I think that's very similar in weightlifting.
Yeah,
it's delivering that power in the right manner to get a successful lift.
I know you're preparing now for the World Champs in Doha. There's something about competing at an international level that somehow brings out a different energy in your training, the way you approach the sport. Suddenly, you become so much more focused and disciplined. Not that you're short on either of those, but when you're heading into the World Champs, it takes on a prestige of its own, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. And I think exactly as you said, now. A couple months ago, I was sitting watching the Olympics and watching the guys in my category lift in the Olympics, and just being absolutely amazed at how strong these guys are. Then that sort of sinking realization hits you that in a few months' time, you are competing against them. So
that's crazy.
But it brings it to a whole nother level.
Yeah,
and I think helps in terms of motivation. That's all the motivation you need. You're going to be there.
Yeah.
So you best be well prepared. So the motivation becomes a little bit easier. But then also, the sacrifices you have to make is, okay, to get there, I need to do this, and I need to go to training, and I need to stay fit. I can't get injured.
Sure.
I need to be sleeping well. I need to be doing all the recovery.
Yeah.
Everything sort of takes a step up.
One of those things also when it comes to the prep is just the realization, this is like part of your mental preparation, is that you will only ever be competing against yourself.
Exactly. And I think that's an awesome thing in weightlifting is, yes, it's a competition and you're going against everyone else and you're comparing yourselves to them. But at the end of the day, it's you the only person at that time on the platform going to lift that weight, whatever it is.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think personally that's how I've been looking at it. And, as long as I can keep progressing and I can get there and lift my best weights, that's a success. Everything else will look after itself. If you can keep doing that time after time after time, you'll go places. You
got to back yourself, man. And it's lovely to see the kind of support you're getting also from your friends, your family. And I think that's part of the fun of it also, is we're going to talk a bit about the gym that you train at and part of what it means to use that as a resource in your preparation. But we're going to come back. We'll take a quick break. It's Swart tonight, Reality Radio on 919 with me, Jack Devnarine. We'll be back after this.
Have a groundbreaking tech startup or hackathon idea? Empire Partner Foundation's Incubation Hub is here to nurture your vision. Our Incubation Hub provides the perfect environment for startups and hackathons to grow, access resources, and make their mark in the tech world. Join us at EPF's Incubation Hub and turn your tech dream into reality. Visit our website for more information on how we can help your startup thrive at empirepartnerfoundation.org.
They say nothing ever lasts. But what about the Fast and Furious franchise? Or showing Anaconda 2 for Friday Action Night? Or how Brooke is still forgiving Ridge Forrester like 50 seasons in? And then there's Burger King's Whopper Meal deal, which is still going strong. So get your hands on 2 flame-grilled Whoppers topped with the freshest ingredients, plus 2 portions of crispy golden fries and 2 bottomless drinks for only 130 Rand. Only at Burger King, where good things do last.
919 has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, programming that is not harmful to children and that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. If you think we're not living up to that code, you can inform the BCCSA. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa to PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024, or email the BCCSA at napsa.co.za. For more information, visit the bccsa.co.za. We all love a good story. Stories of love and life. Stories that entertain and inspire. And the best stories are the ones that happen to be true. Every Friday night, Jack Devlerine is live in conversation with an iconic South African personality who shares the true stories that shape their remarkable lives. Join us for reality radio as real as it gets. From 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Friday night, only on 919.
They say nothing ever lasts. But what about the Fast and Furious franchise? Or showing Anaconda 2 for Friday Action Night? Or how Brooke is still forgiving Ridge Forrester like 50 seasons in? And then there's Burger King's Whopper Meal deal, which is still going strong. So get your hands on 2 flame-grilled Whoppers topped with the freshest ingredients, plus 2 portions of crispy golden fries and 2 bottomless drinks for only 130 Rand. Only at Burger King, where good things do last.
And we're back, Reality Radio on a Friday night with me, my special guest, Will Swart, South African weightlifting champ. What was your sporting life like when you were in school?
Busy.
Is it? You were always an athlete?
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, from even before school, I did gymnastics.
Oh.
And I think that was a crucial point in setting me up for my entire sporting career throughout school.
Mm-hmm.
As doing gymnastics teaches you how to control your body, get strength relative to your size, and flexibility as well. So I think that was a good starting point for me.
Because coordination is a big thing with gymnastics. I mean, you got to hold yourself up, you got to pull yourself up, you've got to orientate yourself, even if you're upside down. You got to know
flip
where
your
you
body
are.
around,
Yes.
and so I think that really helped in sporting and throughout school.
Yeah.
And I mean, my family's always been a big sporting family. Everyone in my family's been very involved in sport pretty much their entire lives.
Yeah.
So school, naturally, I was involved in everything. In the high school, I did, athletics, water polo, swimming, rugby. Played pretty much every sport I could. And it was probably a little bit more focused on the sport than the school some of the time.
Yeah.
But the main focuses were rugby and water polo up until matric. And then matric, I actually stopped the water polo because it was getting too much to balance the both. And then it was mainly rugby, and swimming was my summer sport.
What was it like for mom? Like, oh no, I got to fetch Will at 5, and then it's something else after that. And was it always an eternal chase to see what is Will doing next?
It was a very busy household. And I mean, it was exactly the same I've got a brother who's a year and a half older and a sister a year and a half younger. So, I mean, most of that time it was 3 of us, all on very busy schedules, getting dropped off at 6 a.m. for early morning swimming, hard, eh? And, trying to pack a lunchbox that all of us have enough food for the whole day to last into, your 2 hours of sport after school as well. Yeah. And then Vicky's finishing sport at 4:30 and Chris is at 5:30 and Will's at 5. How do I coordinate fetching them all?
Yes, exactly.
So my mom was amazing. Busy.
Just to manage the kids and that schedule, that must have been just work on its own. Mm-hmm. And what was your teachers? What was their attitude like? Were they used to developing in you a sense of motivation, to be disciplined, to set your goals? How was it working with the teachers?
I think, definitely. It was always a focus on where you want to be and how you need to get there. And throughout every sport, if it's rugby season, in the beginning of the season, okay, we're doing preseason now because we need to be fit to be able to play to our best of ability. And very individual. I was a hooker and a flank. If you're a hooker, you need to throw into the lineouts. So you need to make sure you're working on your lineouts. And so there was always a very positive drive, I think, throughout the school and all the coaches and staff in terms of, set a goal, work towards it, work together as a team towards a goal. What is the team's goal for this year? So I think goal setting was always a central theme.
Also, and this is becoming very interesting because those were mostly team sports, and weightlifting is anything but.
Yeah.
So at which point did weightlifting become a feature in your mind, and why did that become so important to you?
It's a bit of a long one, I guess. So rugby for me was always the sport I played and I loved. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to an overseas university because of rugby.
Yeah.
Went there and played rugby for an awesome rugby club while I was studying. And that was always a big part of my life. The rugby guys were my best mates. All the mates I have now, all from the rugby guys. They looked after me when I first got there, going over all alone.
Yeah.
So that was always a support system. And I think sort of why I started getting into strength training was because of rugby.
Okay.
I was always quite a strong guy, but I was always on the small side for a rugby player. So I was always the smallest guy in the team. Not in the team, but maybe the forwards. So when I got to university and was playing for a men's club level team, I needed to put on some size and start training.
Yeah.
And that's where the strength training side of things started.
Yeah.
And then when I came back to South Africa and had sort of decided I'm not going to play rugby anymore, I carried on with the training and then got more and more interested in strength training, getting strong, found powerlifting. Actually was the first strength sport I did.
Yeah.
That was 2021. And then I guess set a goal in powerlifting.
Yeah.
And then work towards that goal. And again, that's an individual sport, but I think I had a similar mentality in terms of, what do I want to do in the sport? What are my goals? And I found it on one side, you miss the team aspect and the camaraderie and so on, but also I quite enjoyed that everything is on your terms. Yeah. Sometimes you can play a rugby match and you can have the absolute best game of your life. And but there's 14 other guys in the team, and not everyone else was having their best day.
Sure.
And the day as a whole doesn't go very well.
Yeah, and then there's a part of you that takes responsibility for that as well, right? But when it's you on the platform in the weight, it's only you from start to finish.
And there's no hiding in it as well. It goes both ways. Sometimes it's you the one who's struggling a little bit, and your team around you can carry you along. If you're on the weightlifting platform and you not having a great day for whatever reason, there's absolutely no hiding. You're standing on a platform in front of everyone, and all eyes are on you. And
there's no lucky shot. There's no lucky break. There's no, a try that came out of nowhere.
Exactly. The weight is the weight. It doesn't care how you're feeling. And so I like that. It puts a bit of pressure on, and you need to be ready for that and get excited about that rather than shy away from it. And I think that's what I've loved about it.
And it's I've been on the platform a few times, not as a weightlifter but as a powerlifter, and I think most lifters will agree it's probably the loneliest place in the world.
Yeah.
Just being on that platform.
You walk out and it's silent and everyone is watching you. It's really something you have to get used to in the first few competitions. I think as I've gone to bigger and bigger competitions as well, it's always something you got to get used to and you got to own.
Yeah.
When you walk out there, it's got to be your platform and you there to lift, and everyone else is just watching. You can't let it get to you.
What was that travel experience like? Your first time, you're coming out of high school, you got this opportunity at a university in the UK. There must have been huge anticipation. also because you're there with the sport that you love. So what was going on inside of you? Walking out into the wild unknown.
I think it was a very interesting time in my life and very formative time. I matriculated in 2016, and then it was I'm going to the University of East Anglia. I'm going to go join North Walsham Rugby Club. Very excited for all of that, but that was in 9 months' time. That's starting in September.
Right.
So I had 9 months to travel and explore the world, and I think my 18-year-old self was very excited about it.
Okay.
And sort of just tried out anything I could.
Really? So what was that? What did you do?
I did this all through a organization called Workaways.
Okay.
So to avoid having to get lengthy work visas and so on, you basically work for food and board.
Oh, okay.
And there's a website, and you can look at different ads, and there'll be someone wanting a laborer to do farming.
Like just manual labor?
Manual labor.
Okay.
So I started with a month in St. Albans in the UK, working on an Arabian horse farm.
Wow.
So literally mucking out stables, feeding the horses, taking them in and out of the schools.
Like a real steward, like a ranch hand, hey?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it was all cool. It was you stay you get accommodation, you get food. And I did that for a month, which was really interesting experience. I'd never really been around horses, so learning how to walk a Arabian stud past all the females and keep it under control was quite an interesting experience. So I did that for a month. Then I went to Switzerland for a month. Completely different job as well. Then this was more of a au pair and house help type of job. So it was a couple in Switzerland who had a 4-year-old son, and it was looking after him, fetching him from school.
Really?
Doing homework.
And you're good with the kids?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I've grown up in a family with a big family,
Yeah.
lots of cousins. So younger cousins, older cousins, always been around, both, and I think growing up like that, you get used to dealing with people a few years older than you and
Sure.
a lot younger than you as well.
And he could speak English, right?
He could, not the best English.
Uh-huh.
And that was a bit of a challenge, to be honest.
Okay.
He wasn't the most cooperative kid.
I love that.
So learned a bit of patience there.
Yeah.
I was in Switzerland for that month. Then I moved on to Luxembourg. That was cool, first of all, because I didn't even know Luxembourg was a place until I went there. It's just a tiny little country within the heart of Europe.
I hear it's very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the ones I probably enjoyed the most. I was working on a vegetable farm. So it was often these days, actually, when work is tough and stressful and there's a lot going on in your life, I look back then and I was like, that was simple times. We stayed in a little house in the village, and we'd wake up and ride our bicycles to the farm.
Yeah.
It was a small holding that a family owned, and I was a laborer helping them. And then it was literally spending the day spitting manure, planting strawberries, picking carrots, just really simple physical labor.
Yeah. And an honest day's work.
I think what was cool about that as well is throughout this whole time is you would work 5 or 6 days a week, and then you'd get a day off. And being in Luxembourg or Switzerland, I could take the weekends to go see the places I've never been to.
Yeah.
So managed to see a lot of Europe as well, which was awesome. And then went to Sweden, which was a very interesting experience. We ended up, again, physical labor, working on I wouldn't really say a farm, more of a homestead. But with interesting couple, Hare Krishna couple.
A Hare Krishna couple.
A Hare Krishna couple.
That is unbelievable. So how long did you spend there?
It was meant to be a month. It only ended up being about 3 weeks. We didn't really. What was sold in the advert was not the actual picture of what happened at the farm.
That's a brilliant story. We're going to come back to that. Will and his Hare Krishna adventure in Sweden. We're going to take a quick break. This is Reality Radio on a Friday night with Will Swart, our South African weightlifting champion, and more stories about his travels after this.
Monday to Friday, 3 to 6 p.m.
I was on E and I was like, picked up my phone, typed in diesel station near me.
Yeah.
And it took me to like a truck depot. I filled up the tank and it went to something like 1.3.
Yeah.
A full tank in my car at a normal petrol station goes up to like 1.9. Whoa! Dude, listen here, I found like a party trick. This is what I'm gonna do.
Is there one for petrol? Can you organize one for me, please?
I don't know about y'all, but I know about me.
Okay, diesel guy.
You're in the driver's seat with Lebang Khosana. We all love a good story. Stories of love and life. Stories that entertain and inspire. And the best stories are the ones that happen to be true. Every Friday night, Jack Devnarine is live in conversation with an iconic South African personality who shares the true stories that shape their remarkable lives. Join us for reality radio as real as it gets. From 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Friday night, only on 919. 919 has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, programming that is not harmful to children and that does not amount to hate speech, or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. If you think we're not living up to that code, you can inform the BCCSA. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa to PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024. Or email the BCCSA at napsa.co.za. For more information, visit the bccsa.co.za.
And we're back. It's 919. It is reality radio on a Friday night with Will Swart in the guest seat. So, were you a religious person at any point in your life? And then suddenly you with this family in Sweden, that's the Hare Krishna devotees. Yeah. What was that like?
Interesting. It was when we first looked at the advert to go join them. It was, they sort of mentioned at the bottom of the advert, they want people to come help with work, and so 5 days a week and so on. And you'll get a place to stay and food, and sort of. By the way, we were Hare Krishna. I was with a friend at that time as well who joined me for that leg of the travels, and it was a very, cool. We absolutely don't mind whatever religion you are. That's it's not our we don't mind, but not realizing that they probably didn't share the same view, and they wanted us to convert.
Okay, that was a mistake.
Which that what I think what made it really interesting. We had to follow their strict vegetarian diet.
But that in itself isn't a big deal for you, is it?
I would say no. I have actually tried vegetarian for a few weeks, but at the moment not anywhere close.
You need a steak from time to time.
I'm more on the opposite end of the spectrum.
That's where you and I sit.
Closer to carnivore than to vegetarian. So it was a really cool experience. We're on this literally really high up north in Sweden. You only get like 3 hours of darkness. You would wake up at 3 a.m. to go for a wee, and it's bright outside.
Oh, wow. Okay. There is something about the Nordic light, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a steely grey that's just somehow just seeps in everywhere. So, if you don't schedule yourself, it can really leave you messed up with sleep.
Yeah. So it was interesting time. Got to see the way they lived. We would milk a cow every morning at 8 a.m. and every night at 8 p.m. Do various manual labor throughout the day. So interesting experience. Enjoyed it to some extent, but the accommodation as advertised was actually a building site where we were sleeping in a loft roof.
Oh, really?
We could only eat a vegetarian diet, and sort of every day or so the owner of the place would push a little bit onto us, read this book being their Bible, and do this, and it basically got a bit too much. And we said, listen, after 3 weeks, we've had enough. We enjoyed it, but I don't think we're going to stay and be here for I think as long as you want us to be.
Did you have to get into the chanting and all of that as well?
That was So we'll never forget the first morning, I think we were there.
Yeah.
We had to milk the cow for the first time at 8 a.m. Cool. My friend and I go and sat down, and we opposite sides of the cow now, milking away. And the owner and his wife and a whole bunch. There was always a lot of people there, which was quite strange. All in their white robes and their whole get up, sitting around, chanting while we milked the cow, which.
That's incredible. Okay, so because this is coming from the cow, obviously this the chant is somehow going to bless its product.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said, we really had no problem with that's whatever you believe is what you believe, and that's cool with us. But I think when it started being pushed onto us quite a lot, it got a bit much, and that's when we got out of there.
I love that. So from milking cows, listening to a Hare Krishna chant, you went to play rugby.
Yeah. So it was 1 week I was there. The next I was back in the UK for North Walsham Rugby Club, which is the club I played for while I was at university. And straight into their pre-season training regime, doing really hard fitness sessions.
Really?
So in the space of a few days, the day-to-day life changed quite dramatically.
I can imagine. And what was it like? Did it compare as a rugby training regime to anything that you had done in South Africa? Because you were playing rugby as well up to a high level. Was it a different kind of training, or did it compare favorably?
Pretty similar.
Is it?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, I think the big step up was I'd just been playing schoolboy rugby and I'd done well at schoolboy rugby, but now you're playing men's club rugby.
Yeah.
So there's guys there who are 35 years old and are absolute units and love smashing the new kids. So that took some getting used to. And I mean, that's sort of where I started getting more and more into the gym is, I need to compete with these guys physically. So I need to get some strength and put on some size.
Don't you find that it's a similar kind of thing though? If you had continued with rugby in South Africa, you'd still come across those guys, right?
Yeah, I think that's a common theme in rugby.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost a rite you have to go through is the new guy, the new small young guy.
Yeah.
The older guys on the pitch are going to try, teach you what they can do.
Sure.
But it's just part of the game.
And respect to you if you can take it.
Exactly.
And
they're sort of testing your medal.
Yes. Yeah, isn't it ironic though? Because I mean, you were mentioning earlier that you're one of the smallest guys in the team, but at the same time, that's exactly what makes you a great lifter. Because a great lifter is really strong while carrying as little body weight as possible.
Exactly. And I think that almost goes all the way back to the gymnastic days. It's you need to be really strong in weightlifting for your size.
Yeah.
There's 10 categories in weightlifting from, I think the lightest male category is 55 kilograms.
Okay.
Up to 109 plus.
Wow.
So you have guys who are 55 kgs and guys who are 180 kgs. And everyone has their category, and the whole, you need to be as strong as possible within your category.
Yeah.
I compete at 89 kilograms. So when I go to Bahrain in December, I need to stand on the scale 2 hours before I lift, and I have to weigh 89 kgs.
Yeah.
And I'm competing against everyone else who weighs 89 kgs.
Right.
So it's being as strong as possible at that size.
What's your natural body weight?
A little bit over.
Okay.
So normally sit at about 90, 91 kgs.
So that's within reason. I mean, if you had to, you could fast for a day and still make your weight.
Yeah. So I monitor it closely. Obviously, because if you get there and you 89 and a half, you can't compete.
Yeah.
But I don't need to do any drastic measures to get down. Down to I sort of start leaning out a little bit a week or two before, just eating a little bit less. And by the time I compete, I'm 89.
And what's it like working with the team? You obviously have a fantastic team around you. Rodney Anthony is one of the legends of the sport, not just as a coach, but as a lifter as well. And I think the part that people don't really get about Rodney is that he was one of the most recognized and well-respected South African powerlifters, recognized around the world, I have to say. And he's achieved at least that much as a coach as well. What's it like working with him?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's been having someone like that pushing you, and someone who's been there and done that and competed at the highest level.
Yeah.
They really know what it takes, and they know how to get there. So when I first started, and I actually got introduced to Rodney by chance, the first weightlifting competition I did, a guy from the then CrossFit gym that I was training at.
Yeah.
Chris also trained at School of Strength, Rodney's gym. And Rodney came to check in on Chris, and Chris was helping me out, and
okay.
Rodney ended up helping me out on the day as well.
Is it?
And then I said, I'm looking for a weightlifting gym.
Yeah.
And came and started training with Rodney. And I think from the get-go, I said to him, I want to do well in the sport. I want to go to the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
I want to really take it to a high level.
So was that an early goal of yours right from then?
Oh, I mean,
wow.
I started the sport with that goal in mind. I think.
I see. Okay.
So having Rodney there, who has taken people to the highest level and knows how to do it.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't just doing it looking at South African champs, or looking at Gauteng champs, or looking at, local competitions.
Yeah.
I think my eyes have always been set on international competition and getting to the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
So having that, and Rodney slowly pushing me in the right direction, has been crucial in getting where I am today.
Because it is an incremental process, isn't it? Because wherever you're starting out, you are adding like a half kilo at a time through a slow, steady, rigorous, disciplined process to reach a point where you can compete, you can nail that weight, and you're going to still lift a little bit more the next week.
And I think riding that line is why you need a coach, and having someone guiding you through that process is really tricky, because it can be a very frustrating sport at times. You go, as you said, every week, if I did this exercise at 100 kilograms this week, next week I'll do it at 105 kilograms maybe.
Yeah.
And you make those small progressions during your training cycle, but you can only do that for so long before you can't do it anymore, or before your body starts getting too fatigued. And to have someone to be there and be like, okay, cool, let's dial it back a little bit now.
Yeah.
You've done the work, you've made some progression, let's let your body recover, and then go for a new best.
Are you a good mentor?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I think through the way I train, and the lessons I've learned in my life to where I am now, I can be a positive voice on someone a few years behind me and where I am in terms of experience, life experience, and can guide them with the things I've learned along the way.
Your father was an important influence in that as well, wasn't he?
Big time.
Yeah. What were some of the lessons that you learned from Dad?
I think the main underlying thing always was, I think my dad was the proper father.
Yeah.
He wasn't not supportive. He wasn't coddling and protective. He was go out and figure it out.
Yeah.
And you will learn.
Yeah.
And from being little kids, I've heard stories from my mom of we would be climbing a tree, and you're 3 years old, and my dad's view would always be, let them climb it, let them fall.
Yes.
Let them learn that, find your limits. Much to your mom's horror. But so as I got older, and anything I wanted to go to university overseas, my dad was like, great, how can we make it happen?
I love that. He was always about the plan, wasn't he? So that's an amazing thing. We're going to pick up on the plan idea, because we're going to take a break now and come back into conversation with Will Swart on 919 and Reality Radio this Friday night.
919.
I just want to feel good every day.
919. The music never stops. Never stops. The good times never end. Good times never end. 919.
My best time is always with you.
919. We all love a good story. Stories of love and life. Stories that entertain and inspire. And the best stories are the ones that happen to be true. Every Friday night, Jack Devnerine is live in conversation with an iconic South African personality who shares the true stories that shape their remarkable lives. Join us for reality radio as real as it gets. From 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Friday night, only on 919.
And we're back. It's Reality Radio on a Friday night with me, Jack Devnerine, and tonight, Will Swart talking to us about his campaign for a medal in the World Weightlifting Champs coming up in December. We are talking about Dad, and I think, you raised something really important about how your dad's influence reminded you can dream what you like, pursue whatever you wish, but have a plan to get there. And that's the part where you had to crystallize your idea in order to convince your dad that this was a real thing.
And I think that was always the guidance we would get from him. You could go to him and be like, Dad, I want to do this. And it might seem the most outrageous thing on earth at that time.
Yeah.
But it was never, oh no, you can't do that. That's too difficult. Or that's too hard. It was, okay, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be challenging, but you can get there. How are you going to do it? And I think that instilled in me for, in my entire life and in any goal I've pursued is set the scary goal.
Yeah.
And, your goal needs to be big enough that it scares you.
Okay.
And then break it down and set the steps or the plan and the strategy to get towards that goal. And I think that's the first time I think he sort of was with me on that journey was in 2022. I wanted to try this CrossFit challenge, which is to squat 500 pounds, which is 227 kilograms.
Yeah.
And run a 5-minute mile in the same day. So really big challenge. Only 2 people have ever done it.
Something that scares you.
Something that scared me.
Yeah.
And I remember in the beginning of the year telling my dad this, and a lot of people I told were like, okay, cool, well, like, nice, He was not the only one, but very much so saying, great, like, but how are you going to do it?
Oh.
And to have almost playing that coaching role of, this is the plan. I first need to get strong enough to squat that much weight.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to do it. This is the training program I'm going to do. Once I'm there, I'm going to get fit enough to run while maintaining the squat strength.
Sure.
And he sort of followed me through that whole thing. And when I ended up doing it in November 2022, I think for me, that was a big shift in my mind. So, okay, that was a really scary goal. And I worked really hard and it took long and I stuck to the plan and there were setbacks but I did it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of almost how I got into the weightlifting was looking at I was doing CrossFit, as I said, and you do the weightlifting movements in CrossFit. And I thought about doing a weightlifting competition and sort of, every year I like to have a goal. That was the one in 2022. 2023, I was like, weightlifting.
Yeah.
And I looked on the South African Weightlifting Federation website and saw the weights you need to qualify for certain competitions.
Yeah.
And to qualify for Commonwealth Games, I needed to do 277 kilogram total. And I saw that and I was like, okay, I've done a year-long goal. Let's go for a 3-year goal.
Yeah.
And let's really commit and work towards it. It's a very scary goal, but I think it's possible. And I mean, that's how I got into weightlifting, and I'm working towards that goal. I've luckily surpassed the numbers I need to do already.
That's incredible, man.
But I think that shows what happens when you have a plan and you do the small steps. A scary goal should be scary, but sometimes it can go better than you expect. So
you're saying if the goal is scary and you apply yourself, you could actually be making more progress than if you set a modest goal and achieved it early.
100%.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I'd said, okay, I want to qualify for, or I want to do 240 kilogram total.
Yeah.
A little bit more than I was doing at that time when I started. That would be great, and I probably would have done it. But it might have taken a lot longer than thinking I need to do a 277 kilogram total.
Yeah.
and I'm going to work as hard as I can now towards it. And having that big goal, and then world champs was 296 kilogram total. The bigger the goal, I think the harder you need to work.
Sure.
And you end up making more progress than you would if you set a more achievable or a less scary goal.
I like the idea that you mentioned earlier about sometimes plans have to change because you might come across a certain challenge that the original plan simply isn't going to work under these circumstances. So you've got to change your plan. And this idea that your goal's going to scare you, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's something that I can absolutely hear coming out of your mind. Some of those challenges, though, can be things like distractions. So in your university years, as an example, I mean, we distracted all the time. I distracted myself right there. So, so when you were at university, you're out of the country, you're not under mum and dad's roof or rules. You're making this up as you're going along. Did you have, at any point, were you tempted to explore things that might have been a serious distraction and taken you away from your university goals?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that's a natural thing that happens for anyone going to university or leaving home for the first time. I mean, there's lots of drinking, there's drugs, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to try those things and to see, you need to figure these things out for yourself. I think the same as when you're a 3-year-old and you need to climb the tree and fall.
Exactly.
You need to,
Yeah.
I think if you steer away from any negative influence ever in your life, that's also probably a negative thing. But definitely, I mean, drinking is a big culture in university.
Yeah.
And the rugby club I was at, drinking was a big thing, and you'd celebrate a win with a lot of drinks, and there's initiation, and I think the world we live in, you need to learn how to handle that.
Yeah. I mean, this is something you mentioned earlier as well. It's almost as if drinking a huge amount of alcohol is a rite of passage. It's embedded in our culture, not just as South African people, but globally. And you wonder, but why did that become the default position? That you've got to be a heavy drinker in order to earn your stripes. Part of the rite of passage to be a man, they say. But it shouldn't have to be that way, should it?
No, it shouldn't. And I think that is a difficult thing. And you talk about distractions and sacrifices. I guess it shouldn't be a sacrifice not drinking.
Exactly.
But the world we live in,
Yeah.
I've been brought up in a family where we have a braai all together and we have a few drinks.
Yeah.
And
That's normal, right?
I mean, that's normal.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But if it becomes a point where the drinking is too much and it's negatively affecting your life, then it is a bad thing.
Yeah. But
And
then
if
where
you-
do we draw that line then, is the question, right?
And I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And I mean, I might be on the opposite end at the moment, where I'm training for world champs and I'm not drinking at all. And, but sometimes maybe having a drink or two to let off some steam could be a good thing. But where do you draw that line?
Yeah.
And, how do you stop that from completely derailing and 2 drinks becoming 8 drinks? And I think that's a thing that everyone struggles with.
Yeah.
I mean, most adults in South Africa have a drink every now and again,
Yeah, of course.
but some a lot more than others. And where do you find that line that it doesn't negatively affect things in your life?
I realize also, you talk about challenges in the sport. I know that weightlifting as a sport itself globally is under a spotlight. And in fact, there was talk at one point that they were at risk of losing their spot in the Olympics because of doping and performance-enhancing drugs. How do we administer the system so that that sort of thing is understood better? And if we're going to police it, how are we going to police it better?
It's a very interesting conversation. I think my view on it has changed a lot, getting more and more into weightlifting and learning how it really works.
Yeah.
Because I think the bottom line is a lot of lifters in weightlifting are taking performance enhancing drugs. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And powerlifting.
And powerlifting. But I think where my view has shifted is I would always, if I saw so-and-so got busted for steroids,
Yeah.
I would be irritated at that person. How can they do it? Why are they cheating? Whereas I think I see it now more as a national problem with certain countries.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning as I go through everything in the sport and go to competitions at the different levels and so on is South Africa, for example, is really good. We have SAID, South African anti-doping, and they police their athletes and everyone gets tested. And if you want to take steroids here or take performance enhancing drugs, that's your own prerogative, and chances are you will be caught.
Right. And then you're going to lose your title or whatever it is you earned.
But I know for other countries, it's the other way around.
It's
where
institutionalized.
It's the federation is saying, if you want to be a weightlifter for our country, you have to take these things.
Yes.
And we'll protect you and we'll try and make sure you don't get caught and so on. So I think that's what needs to stop.
Absolutely.
The federations need to be better policed, or there needs to be better policy that they can't get away with sheltering their athletes and also, not necessarily forcing, but advocating for their athletes to take things. Yeah. To say, if you want to be whatever country it is, if you want to be a national lifter, this is what you need to do. Yeah. It shouldn't be like that.
No, that's a very cynical way to approach it. And surprisingly, there's so many of those countries that I've read of that actually do that. But you have a view of the world as well, generally speaking, that we should all be doing more to protect our environment, for example. And this is part of the work that you do, right? So it was a very important title that I remember that you had. It was you're development director or something?
Project development director.
Project development director. What kind of projects do you develop and direct?
Yeah. So the company I work at is called Vigo Energy Group. Yeah. We're a South African independent power producer. So IPP.
So you are one of those guys that you actually want to say we can do this better and cheaper.
Yeah, we can do it better and cheaper. We can produce energy with renewable energy sources. Yeah. That's not coal and at a lower cost as well. So we take projects from feasibility, which entails going to speak to a landowner and finding a piece of land that we think has got really good wind resource or really good solar resource, and saying, and because of various environmental sensitivities and the topography of the land, we think this is a great site to build a 100 megawatt solar plant. Yeah. And then we sign that land up with the landowner and we take it through all the studies, and we go and we raise funding and we basically get a project built, 100 megawatt solar project, and then our product is selling those electrons.
And then making sure that people are getting value for the money, whether it comes to the investment, the setup costs, there's going to be some kind of return within a realistic time frame. So you've got to manage all of that, including all the relationships and everything.
Yeah. So as my role is basically taking projects from the idea to actually where you have all your environmental impact assessments are done, your designs are done, your permits are all done. Yeah. You've got a funder lined up, you've got a off-taker lined up, someone who's going to be buying the electricity, and actually make the idea a reality.
So you've got to try and produce as much power as you can using the least amount of effort possible. That's weightlifting right there.
Yeah. Exactly. Similar thought process. The most efficient way of producing power.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of those similarities that you've seen? We have time just for one. Something that you are aware of as a lifter that relates to life in general.
I think for me the biggest thing is, or the biggest similarity I see is, in weightlifting the bar doesn't care. You're going to snatch 100 kilograms. It doesn't care that you had a great day. It doesn't care that you had a really bad day. It doesn't care that you sore because you didn't sleep enough or you're tired or you're feeling a little bit sick, you've got a scratchy throat, it doesn't care. And to lift it, you have to do what you need to do to lift it. And I think life is the same. It doesn't care.
Yeah.
But with, doing the right work and doing the right things and following a plan and progressing slowly and incrementally, where you went from 100 kilogram snatch to 120 kilogram snatch, you can go from point A to point B similarly in your life.
Well, Swart, all the best for the World Champs in Doha in December. You are an incredible champion. You are a mentor. You really are an inspiration. And I want to say thank you for joining us on Reality Radio.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Everybody, that's it. Join us again next Friday night, because that's what we have on 919 every Friday night from 6 to 7 with me, Jack Devnarine. Have a great weekend.